Yes, with Hanukkah approaching, we're going to look at a Maamar, a Hanukkah Maamar, that was said, Motzei Shabbos Parshas Miketz, which was Shabbos Hanukkah Tafshin Lamed Ches, in the year 1970, well, it still would have been 77.
Yeah?
Yeah, Hanukkah is...
Hanukkah, yes, it's December, yes.
So, this Maamar is actually a hemshech. It's two Maamarim that continue one from the other. We'll see how far we get. Tonu Rabbonon, Mitzvah ner Chanukah, Beis Shammai Omrim Yom Rishon Madlik Shmoina, Mekan Ve'elech Poiches Ve'holech. Beis Hillel Omrim Yom Rishon Madlik Achas, Mekan Ve'elech Moisef Ve'holech. So there is a well-known discussion about the mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah Menorah in the Talmud, in Tractate Shabbos, Maseches Shabbos. The rabbis taught that the mitzvah of lighting the candle of Hanukkah, Beis Shammai, is of the opinion, the house of Shammai, the school of Shammai, is that on the first day you light 8 candles, the first night of Hanukkah, and each night onwards you go one less. So 8 on the first night, 7 on the second, 6 on the third, until the 8th night you light 1 candle. That's Beis Shammai's opinion of how to light the Hanukkah Menorah. Beis Hillel, the school of Hillel, holds that on the first night you light 1 candle, the second night you add 1, and so on. First night 1, second night 2, third 3, until the final night we light 8. And indeed we know that halacha is like Beis Hillel. So the Gemara discusses what's the reasoning behind the two opinions. We've got 8 days of Hanukkah. Beis Shammai says you should light 8 and go down. Beis Hillel says you should light 1 and then go up. Why? What's the logic behind the two opinions? So Tamid Beis Shammai, the reason behind Beis Shammai, Keneged Parei Chag, they say it corresponds to the cows that were offered on Sukkot. That the Torah tells us that on the festival of Sukkot there were cows offered every day of Sukkot, 13 on the first day, 12 on the second day, 11 on the third day, right down to 7 on the 8th day.
The
7th day. The 8th is Shemini Atzeret. So that was in a descending number, getting less and less every night and every day. So therefore, when the rabbis made an enactment, a rabbinical enactment, they always do it ka'ein d'oraisa, similar to something in the Torah. If the Torah has a descending order or a lessening every day for the festival of Sukkot, so for the festival of Hanukkah we do the same thing, 8, 7, 6, 5. That's the logic of Beis Shammai. The time of Beis Hillel, and the reasoning of Beis Hillel, the Ma'alim B'Kodesh is because you should always extend holiness. You should increase in holiness, not decrease, not go down. So therefore start with 1, then 2, then 3. Right? So the Gemara here is offering the logic behind these two opinions. That Beis Shammai said, I looked in the Torah and I looked for a precedent, and I found that in Sukkot we reduced the number of sacrifices every day. So therefore we should do the same on Hanukkah, 8, 7, 6, 5. Whereas Beis Hillel say there's a principle, Ma'alim B'Kodesh, you should always increase holiness, not lessen, not go down in it. So therefore, start with 1 and then go up. That is the discussion in the Gemara. So it's known the question that the Alter Rebbe asks in Torah on this. What's the connection between Hanukkah candles and the cows offered on Sukkot? Where's Shammai taking it from? Is Shammai, what's the connection between the two? That you should just say, because the Parei Chag are reduced, so the Hanukkah candles are reduced. There must be a connection. It can't just be that we're looking for a procession of different numbers and we found one in the Torah. There must be a direct connection. If Beis Shammai say that we're learning from Parei Chag, from these cows that were offered on Sukkot, this is where we're learning the laws of Hanukkah from. It must mean that there's an innate connection between the two. What is it? What's the connection between them? And particularly when we keep in mind what the Tzemach Tzedek said, that Beis Hillel don't disagree with Beis Shammai. You're right, we should learn from the Parei Chag, but we have a different principle, and that is called Ma'alim B'Kodesh, so therefore in this case we don't learn from the Parei Chag. So Tzemach Tzedek says
we don't take it.
that you're right. The comparison is good, but Ma'alim B'Kodesh you have to always increase with holiness, not decrease. So therefore, we do not do what we did with the Parei Chag. So In other words, Beis Hillel never argued. He never said it's nothing to do with Sukkot, nothing to do with the Parei Chag. No, it's a good comparison, but Ma'ila B'Kodesh we have to increase in holiness. So therefore, if it's a good comparison, what indeed is this innate connection between the Parei Chag and Hanukkah candles? And what's explained in several places in Chassidus, that the connection between the two is that Sukkot and Hanukkah are both festivals of 8 days. That Sukkot is an 8-day festival. You know, the Shmini Atzeres is a part of the Sukkot continuum, and Hanukkah is an 8-day festival. So therefore, when Beis Shammai was looking for the precedent, the Torah precedent for Hanukkah, for the structure of Hanukkah, well, it's an 8-day yontiv. This is the rabbinical 8-day yontiv, and that's the Torah 8-day yontiv. So therefore, there's a connection between the two. And the number 8 also is not just happenstance, but the Misbashmoina Moira al Bechinas Shalaman Mishtalshlus. The number 8 is the number that represents that which is higher than Ishtalshlus, so higher than the normal system of creation, higher than nature. 7 is the number of creation, 7 days of creation, 7 colors in a rainbow. And 8 is that which is above the system, above nature. So, therefore, the number 8 is not a coincidental thing or a side issue. It is essential to the festival of Hanukkah, which is the Hanukkah Festival of Miracles. And Sukkot is the 8-day festival. So therefore we compared the two. But the Rebbe says, but this itself still needs to be explained. What's particularly connected between Sukkot and Hanukkah and the concept of L'mayla Mishtalshlus, that which is above the system of creation? That these festivals are 8-day festivals. There are many festivals that are about miracles that are not 8 days. Why Hanukkah and Sukkot particularly are 8-day festivals connecting to L'mayla Mishtalshlus above the system? That also needs to be explained. So we're piling up the questions. Now Vagam, another question. The reason why our sages enacted the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles is to commemorate the miracle that happened with the candles in the Beis HaMikdash after the victory over the Syrian Greeks, when they came back and they only found 1 jar of oil enough to last 1 night, and it lasts miraculously 8 nights. So on that, they made the mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candles, the Menorah, every year to commemorate the miracle of the candles of the Mikdash. But in the Beis HaMikdash, there were 7 candles in that Menorah. So why in Hanukkah do we have 8 candles? And you're going to say, well, because the miracle was that it lasted 8 days.
Yeah,
but that itself is a question.
Actually, 9. If you're talking about, like, if the Menorah, you count the Shamash also as a mirror. Yeah, so it's like...
But that's a separate thing. But here you might say, well, the miracle lasted 8 days, so we do it for 8 days. What's your question? We need eight candles. No, but that itself is a question. Why did the miracle last 8 days? That's also from Hashem.
It took 8 days to create new oil.
And why does it take 8 days to create new oil?
That's the last.
So, however, it all has to be exact. It all has to be mechuvan. There's an intention behind everything. So, if the whole thing is to commemorate the Beis HaMikdash, the Menorah of the Beis HaMikdash had 7 branches, and our Menorah doesn't. It has 8. So it's not the same thing. It's not a commemoration in the same way. And the fact that the miracle lasted 8 days, so we have 8 candles, well, that itself is a question. If the Beis HaMikdash's Menorah is a 7-branch Menorah, so then shouldn't that be the number of Hanukkah as well? The fact that it's not must mean that the Hanukkah Menorah is different to the Beis HaMikdash Menorah. The Beis HaMikdash is a 7-branch Menorah. Hanukkah is 8-branch Menorah because of the 8 days. The number 8 must be connected to Hanukkah somehow, not to the Beis HaMikdash, to Hanukkah in a different way. But that needs to be explained.
I'm getting a sense of some messianic connection. Because, the 8-string harp and then the 8 of the Menorah.
Okay, we'll see.
We'll see.
Piling up more questions. V'gam tzarich lahavin, we also need to explain ma shehafar gleich hashva the neres Chanukah hu lo lechag hasukkos bechlal el lepare chag dafka. We need to examine when Beis Shammai gave his reasoning for reducing the candles every night. He compared it to the pare hachag, just like the cows that were offered on Sukkos were reduced every night, so every day. So too we should have less candles every night. So the Torah makes a comparison, a parallel between Hanukkah and Sukkos, but not Sukkos in general, a specific detail of Sukkos, and that is the pare hachag, the cows that were brought as a sacrifice. So what's the connection between Hanukkah and not just Hanukkah and Sukkos, but Hanukkah and the pare hachag of Sukkos? The lechura, because on the surface it would seem not a great comparison. The candles of Hanukkah are connected to the Menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Neres Chanukah hem b'nei hanes shahaya b'neres Menorah. Like we said earlier, that the reason why we light the candles is to commemorate the miracle of the candles of the Menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. And the cows offered on Sukkos, like all offerings, were brought on the Mizbeach, on the altar. The Menorah and the Mizbeach are two very different kalim.
Different places.
Different parts of the Beis Hamikdash. It's the different avodas. So the comparison between the two.
Only by the great Kohen, and the korbanot everybody can sacrifice. This is outside of the Mikdash. This is inside of the Mikdash.
Many differences.
Many differences.
Yeah. And particularly when you look into Kabbalah and Chassidus and its explanations of the symbolism of the various parts of the Beis Hamikdash, each one has its own identity, and the Menorah and the Mizbeach are different and in some ways opposites in their spiritual identity. So, Veneris v'karbanas avodas shonos, and lighting candles and bringing karbanas is also very different. The refinement of the fire of the candle, as opposed to taking the animal and burning up an animal, it's a very different avodah. To the point where Hashem said to Aaron HaKohen, who didn't have a portion in the inauguration of the Mishkan, when all the various Nesiim, the leaders of the different tribes, brought sacrifices, and Aaron did not, and he felt bad, he felt he missed out on something. Hashem says to him, don't worry, you're going to light the candles, and that portion is greater than what they did. What they did is brought animal sacrifice, it's one thing. You're going to light the candles of the Menorah, which is a totally different thing, even higher than the sacrifices. So we see Hashem himself defines the lighting of the Menorah as being a totally different category to karbanos. So and why? Hashem says, because your candles are never bottled. The sacrifices will stop one day, but the lighting of the Menorah will continue forever. So, seeing that they're so different, the lighting of the Menorah in the Beis Hamikdash and the bringing of the karbanos on the Mizbeach, so why is the comparison between the two? Why does Beis Shammai say that the appropriate place to learn out the way to light candles is from the sacrifices, something so different? Another thing we need to understand, that the mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candles is from when the sun goes down.
Sunset.
After sunset. And it's known what is pointed out in other Maamarim. That the candles of the Beis Hamikdash were lit dafka after Plaga Mincha, which is the last portion of the afternoon, which is an hour and a quarter of halachic hours before sunset. So if you take the day from sunrise to sunset, divide it into 12 equal parts, no matter how long the day is, so that's called the halachic hour, a 12th of the from between sunrise and sunset. An hour and a quarter halachic hours before sunset is what's called Plaga Mincha, which is half of Mincha, and it was that time onwards, at the last hour and a quarter of the day, that the Menorah was lit in the Beis Hamikdash.
The last one?
The last hour and a quarter of the day, of daylight, that's when the candles of the Beis Hamikdash were lit every day. If we're saying that the Hanukkah candles are being lit in honor and in memory of the miracle that happened in the Beis Hamikdash with the candles of the Beis Hamikdash, or befratche called the token Rabbonon ke'ein daraisa token, and specifically because there's a principle that whenever the rabbis enacted a rabbinical mitzvah, they always modeled it on a Torah mitzvah. That there are mitzvahs that the rabbis enacted, Gzeiros, the Rabbonon, but they always mimicked or based it on a Torah mitzvah. So surely the lighting of the Hanukkah menorah is ke'ein daraisa, is going to be similar to the lighting of the Beis Hamikdash menorah. It's in memory of that, and a rabbinical enactment will always mimic a Torah thing. So surely we should be lighting the candles at the same time as they lit the Beis Hamikdash candles. But no, the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles is dafka after sunset, whereas the Beis Hamikdash was dafka before. So we're starting to see that there's some dividing definition. There's some differentiation between the Chanukah menorah and the Beis Hamikdash menorah, both in the branches of the menorah, 7 verses 8, in the timing of the lighting before sunset and after sunset, also in the comparison that the Chanukah menorah is compared to the Parei Chag, to the sacrifices in the Beis Hamikdash. There's something different here. So the Rebbe answers. Mm-hmm.
That's made from kappa, that's made from gold.
Mm-hmm. The Rebbe answers in Ois Beis the principle that answers all the questions. And from this we'll understand Beis. So the kernel of the answer is this. The function, the purpose of the Hanukkah candles is to illuminate the darkness. To illuminate the darkness.
So therefore, like we lit the candle.
So we'll see. There's different. The Beis Hamikdash menorah had a different kavanah. The kavanah, the intention, the purpose of the Hanukkah candles is to illuminate darkness. Because the miracle of Hanukkah happened after the Yavanim, the Greeks, entered into the sanctuary and they defiled all the oils in the sanctuary. Meaning that the takeover of darkness represented by the Greeks was to such an extent not only did they contaminate the sanctuary, they even contaminated all the oils in the sanctuary. That's how deep it was. Why is that so significant, contaminating the oils in the sanctuary? Because shemen, oil, represents holiness. As the Torah describes the oil as being the oil of holy anointing. Kodesh milah b'gamei, and the concept of Kodesh, holiness means separateness, something that's beyond. What is somebody that's holy? Something that's holy. What does it mean? Distinct from others, in a category of their own. That's what is a holy thing. A holy person means somebody who is just head and shoulders above the rest. A holy place means a place that is just not your average place. Holiness means something that is in its own category. But dugmas hashemesh etzaf al gabi kol hamashkim be'enim isarav imahim, which is represented and symbolized by oil, because the nature of oil is that it floats above other liquids, so it's higher, and also doesn't mix into other liquids. It remains distinct. And that's what holiness is. Holiness is being above and being distinct. So the oil, shmanim shebeheichel, the oil in the sanctuary, means the holiness of the sanctuary, the distinctness, the elevated state that the sanctuary is in. If the Yavanim, the Greeks, entered the sanctuary and contaminated, that's one thing, but to contaminate even the oil in the sanctuary, all the oil in the sanctuary, that means that the Greek impurity permeated even that level that is supposed to be removed and above and beyond. So from this we can understand the fact that the Greeks contaminated all the oil in the sanctuary. Is, from this perspective, actually even more relevant than the fact that they contaminated the sanctuary itself. Contaminating the oil in the sanctuary, that's a bigger deal. Even though the sanctuary is the holiest place in the world, there's 10 different levels of holiness. The whole land of Israel is holy, and Yerushalayim and the Harabayas, but the Heichel, the sanctuary, is the highest level. Even as this is clear from the fact that even after the Jewish people came back, they were victorious. They came back and they sanctified, they re-purified the holy Beis Hamikdash. But to light the menorah, they needed another miracle. So they'd come back, they'd cleaned up, the sanctuary was ready, but to light the menorah required an additional miracle, showing that lighting the menorah, the oil in the menorah, is a more deeper, higher, essential level of what the Mikdash is about. That even after we've won the war, and we've cleaned up the Beis Hamikdash, we've got it back, and it's all ready to go, but to light the candles of the menorah required another miracle. The victory had to go even further. First miracle was finding oil that still had the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it, that was not contaminated. That was already one miracle, the finding of it. So that represents a light of Hashem, the infinite light of Hashem that's above Ishtalshlus. That darkness cannot reach this light. What does it mean that the Yevonim, that the Greeks didn't contaminate this oil? It means that there's a level of light that the Greeks cannot reach, that impurity and darkness cannot darken. That's what they found, that's what they discovered. In fact, this light, when you catch onto this light, not only can darkness not darken it, it lights up darkness, it transforms darkness. There's a pasuk that says that v'havaya. There's a level that's above havaya, above yud kei vav kei, and that yagir chashchi can actually correct, can lighten up darkness, can transform darkness. That's what they found. So what the Rebbe here is explaining is the entire battle with the Yevonim on its symbolic and spiritual level. That it's not just that another nation came and conquered the Jewish people, like we always see, it happens all the time, that the nation comes, they wage war, they take over, they destroy, they flatten Yerushalayim, and this was a different type of war, this one. This was the Yevonim, they came with a spiritual war. They came not to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, but to contaminate it. Not to knock it down, but to bring Tumah, to pull down the holiness of the Beis Hamikdash. The building stayed, but the holiness should go. And so therefore they went and contaminated all the oil. To contaminate oil, all you need to do is
just to open it.
Even lifting it would be enough.
No, if it's still okay.
No. Actually, Thomas Hesed means that if the Yevonim would have just picked up the oil, that already would have contaminated it. So the Mefarshim say, so how did they know that they didn't pick this one up? The one they found, how did they know that it wasn't picked up in the air? So it's explained that it was actually found buried under the ground. It was untouched. So not only had the seal of the Kohen Gadol on it, it hadn't even been moved. So the Greeks are coming into the Beis Hamikdash knowing this. They know the halachas. They know that we don't need to eat the oil. We don't need to fry chips with it. We just need to move it around, and it's contaminated.
So this is like a real effort to like symbolizing assimilation. Like leave the building intact, just contaminate everything and make everything look like our structures.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks exactly the same now.
Correct.
Except you don't have that.
Correct. Because what you don't have is the oil. That idea that the oil floats above and is separate. This is what the Greeks wanted to pull down from the Jewish people. The idea of Am Kadosh, that we're a holy nation, and that we're a distinct nation, that they wanted to pull down. So you can hang around, but but just be part of us.
Look at what the example that they give. They're like, you're not allowed to learn Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole thing is like, they didn't say to you like not to come to Jerusalem, not to do that. You're not allowed to learn Torah.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. You're not allowed to pray. That's the thing that they do. They didn't ask you like not to leave, and they didn't take you as a capture. No, stay, live in the same place. The only thing you're not allowed to practice Judaism.
Yeah.
That's it.
So yeah.
Yeah, Nesach. It's the same thing that if you pick it up.
No, yeah, Nesach is like have to be.
No.
We learn from that, but to pick it up, no.
If it's sealed, then
it's enough.
It's not a problem.
So this thing only applied to.
This is tumah. This is a tumah thing. Yeah.
So with the Tonu, we
So-
know if it's Samit Patil alav, that's it. It doesn't accept Tonu.
Correct. So the victory over the Yavanim. What was the victory over the Yavanim? The Yavanim had infiltrated the Jewish people, and a lot of the Jewish people had gone for their philosophy, which is go by seichel and just to give up the holiness. So the discovery of a jar of oil that was sealed with the Kohen Gadol seal that was not contaminated. What does that mean? It means finding a level in the Jewish soul that is untouched by these outside influences, by finding that Ein Sof Shalamayim Ishtalshlus, an infinite light of Hashem that is above Ishtalshlus, that cannot be contaminated, that cannot be touched. In fact, that level transforms darkness, cannot be darkened, and can transform, has the power of transforming the darkness. That's what they found. That was the miracle of the finding of the oil. So the Rebbe here is emphasizing that when it came to the victory was not complete when they came back to the Beis Hamikdash. It was only complete when they found the oil. It was an extra miracle that had to happen. So it continues the third last line. So we've answered one question. That is, why is the Ner Hanukkah, the mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candles, is dafka after sunset, after the sun has gone down? Unlike the Beis Hamikdash, where the candles were lit before sunset dafka. Because the whole concept of the Hanukkah candles, the whole point of them is to illuminate the darkness. So it's dafka after dark that we light it, because the Hanukkah candles have the power to transform darkness, to turn it around. And this also will explain why the Hanukkah candles are 8 candles, not 7 like in the Beis Hamikdash. And also the fact that Hanukkah is 8 days, which also didn't have to be. The miracle could have been otherwise. Why was it 8 days? Because as we mentioned earlier, the number 8 represents that which is higher than Ishtalshlus, higher than the system of creation, higher than nature. And it's only on that level that you can illuminate darkness. On the level of nature, there's darkness, there's light. You can have one or the other. Either it's light or it's dark. So I can banish darkness, I can get rid of darkness by putting on the light. Or the darkness can overwhelm the light, but it's one or the other. That's in the laws of nature. Above Ishtalshlus, above nature, there's the possibility of illuminating darkness. What does illuminating darkness mean? It doesn't mean getting rid of darkness. It means darkness should shine. Darkness should be a light. How's that possible? Only above Ishtalshlus. So it wasn't just that the Yavanim came with their darkness to try and extinguish the light of the Beis Hamikdash. So they won for a while. We came back, we banished the Greeks, and we lit the light again, so the darkness is gone. It wasn't just that. It was that we found a level of holiness that illuminates darkness, that makes darkness shine. And that is above Ishtalshlus. That's above nature, that's above the system, where dark and light are two opposites. What this all means, the Maamar will explain. So let's go into the next section. Let's explain this in Avodas Adam, in our spiritual life. What does this all mean, this battle with the Yavanim? Will be understood by introducing a concept brought in the Maamarim of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The fact that the Greeks came into the Heichal, into the sanctuary, and contaminated the oil, didn't destroy it, pour it out, or steal it, they contaminated it, is because the whole war of the Greeks against the Jewish people was a spiritual war. They had no intention of attacking the body of the Jewish people. It wasn't a physical war where they wanted to destroy us physically. Their main intention was to make us forget Torah and to make us reject the laws of the Torah. That was what they wanted. Of course, it ended up being a physical battle, but that was not the original intention. It was only because we rebelled against their intentions that it ended up being a physical battle. But the original intent of the Greeks was to occupy Israel, occupy the Jewish people and their land, and to undo the spiritual power of the Jewish people. That was their original intention. That we shouldn't learn Torah, we shouldn't follow the mitzvahs. And even within the spiritual battle, it's very specific what they were opposing. The fact that they were fighting Torah mitzvahs was not all Torah mitzvahs necessarily. They weren't trying to completely uproot Yiddishkeit. What they opposed was the ruchnis and the godliness of Torah mitzvahs. Meaning,
for example, they're not going to fight like not to kill. They know it's logic. It's like
correct.
It's like that's okay.
More than that, they won't even fight against learning Torah. You can learn Torah as an interesting philosophy. If you're going to learn Torah to sharpen your mind, great. If you're going to learn deep ideas of thought and philosophy, that's all fine. But the idea that there's ruchnius, that there's spirituality, that there's divine, something higher, that's what they opposed. In other words, if we really think about it, what the Greeks believed, lots of people believe today, that Torah is a brilliant philosophy. And God, not God, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that there's a beauty to it, there's a logic to it, it's clever.
No, so they was against
they
the
didn't
Chukim.
mind.
What is the Chukim? The Chukim, they have
We'll talk about that in a minute.
No logic, like paraduma, like things like
Correct.
we're doing, and no logic, but we still do it.
Yeah, he's gonna get into that. Even within Chukim, there's the specific what they were opposing. So the idea that there's elikus, that there's something divine, something beyond, that's what they were opposing. That learning Torah is not just about something clever or sharpening your mind, but it's about connecting to the divine, so transcending the limits of logic. This is what they couldn't stand.
But they could see that people moser nefesh for not to be mityav.
Dezel ashkichem terasecha dafka. What it says in Alanissim, the prayer we say on Hanukkah, it says that the Greeks' intention was lashkichem terasecha, to make us forget terasecha, your Torah, Hashem's Torah. Learn Torah, but not that it's Hashem's Torah. That for us to sit and to learn halachas that aren't relevant to us, and to nitpick about every single detail. Why do we do that? It's not relevant, it's not practical, because it's Hashem's Torah, and this is Hashem's wisdom. That's what they hated. Learn something that's practical, fine, but that it's Hashem's Torah. Or that we learn Torah and this makes sense, that makes sense, and this doesn't make sense, and we still learn it. Things that we don't make sense, we don't understand. We still learn it because it's Hashem's Torah. It's the divine wisdom. This is what they couldn't stand. That you're learning Hashem's Torah. The fact that when a Torah book falls on the floor, you have to kiss it, and you don't put on top of a Torah book another object. Why not? It's just a book. That's what they couldn't stand. That the holiness of Torah. There's a sense of holiness. That to learn Torah, you have to say a bracha beforehand, and you have to be wearing a yarmulke, and it has to be in a respectable place. The honor that was given Torah, that it's a holy thing. This is what they couldn't stand. The Greeks were not so bothered that the Jewish people should learn Torah. That's learning Torah itself is okay. But you should be learning Torah just as another intellectual discipline. To appreciate the logic. They appreciated the logic, the wisdom of Torah. The academic side. Learn it as an academic subject, not as a holy thing.
Aristotle, for example, is a Greek.
Right. Correct. It says in the Torah is our wisdom and our knowledge in the eyes of the nations. So in other words, in the eyes of the nations, it's wisdom and knowledge. It's intellect. That they can handle. The whole war was to make us forget that it's your Torah, that it's Hashem's Torah. It's not just another philosophy. To make the Jewish people, God forbid, forget that the Torah they're learning is the Torah of Hashem. This is what was their main opposition.
Just said again.
And similarly with mitzvahs as well. They didn't mind mitzvahs per se. What they opposed is the divine element of mitzvahs. That you're doing a mitzvah because it's Hashem's will. This is what they bothered. If you're doing mitzvahs because they're nice traditions, cultural traditions, that's fine. If you're doing mitzvahs because it improves your life, it gives you meaning and purpose,
for example,
that's fine.
Because our father said in the sukkah.
But if you're doing it because it's Hashem's ratzon, that this is what Hashem wants, that's what bothers them. If you can give me an explanation, a logical explanation, do every mitzvah you want. But to say, I don't know why I'm doing it because Hashem wants, and that's it. That's what bothers them. Mitzvah ritzonecha.
That's what we explain to our kids, like why we're doing the mitzvah. First, because Hashem asked.
Right.
And then, if you want to find a logic,
That's
And then the
secondary.
first thing, it's like, that's Hashem said.
That's what it means, that they wanted to get us away from chukei ritzonecha, the laws that are your will.
That's
Chukei dafka, v'ritzonecha dafka, specific chukim, the ones we don't understand logically, and specifically ritzonecha, even with chukim. You could keep chukim in a way that is logical. Look, I don't know everything. God knows everything, so I do what he wants. That's a bit logical. Or there's a reason. I don't know the reason, but there's a reason.
No, for example,
So chukei ritzonecha is the chukim that have no reason, and even them to do it ritzonecha just because Hashem wants and no other reason. That's what bothered them. The shnei pirushim is because there's two ways you could explain it. Shala mitzvahs the edus and mishpatim liyosa mitzvahs sichlius. When it comes to mitzvahs called edus and mishpatim, edus are the mitzvahs that commemorate something. So there's a reason for it.
No problem.
We eat matzah because they left Egypt and they ate matzah. We sit in the sukkahs because Hashem protected us. We wouldn't have come up with it ourselves, but it has a logic to it. Mishpatim are laws that are logical that anyone can come up with. Don't steal, don't murder. Other nations also have such ideas. So when it comes to those mitzvahs, they have seichel, they have logic to it. Hiskimu gam Yevonim. So the Yevonim said, fine, you can do all of them. Those mitzvahs make sense, do it. And the whole war was against chukim. Chukim are the laws that we don't understand, we don't have any logic behind them. Why don't we eat milk and meat together? Why is a pig bad? What's wrong with it? Those things that we have no logic behind, those are the mitzvahs that they opposed. Because the way to keep those mitzvahs is, it's what Hashem wants. So the reason why I don't steal is because I need a society that's functioning, so I don't steal. And the reason why I sit in a sukkah is because it commemorates something. It makes me remember where I came from. That's logic, that's reason. But the reason why I have to wait 6 hours after eating meat to have milk, because Hashem said, and that's why we do it.
Exactly.
This is what they bother, the mitzvahs that you do only because Hashem said.
That's exactly when people get upset. Like when I come from Israel, like when I become like, want to come back tshuva, I started to talk about chazir. You know, Shmulik, it's like the doctor proved that we don't eat chazir because it's like it's not diet. Guys, we don't eat chazir because Hashem said so. Chazir is tasty. I can tell you like it's very tasty. We don't eat chazir because Hashem said so.
Yeah.
You want to find a different reason? And gesund ahead. But first you have to know that that's the reason.
That's it. So we've got one explanation is that the chukim specifically they opposed because there's no logic to it. But Opirush base, but Ba'omek Yosef, a deeper explanation is that what they wanted is to get rid of the chukei ritzonecha in all mitzvahs. Gamba mitzvahs the edus u'mishpatim, including the mitzvahs of edus and mishpatim. What does that mean? Even in the logical mitzvahs, there is still a bottom line that we have, and that is that we do it because Hashem wants, and that's it. That even we sit in the sukkah to commemorate a story, but does that mean you can't drink water out of the sukkah? Does that mean you have to make such an effort to sit in the sukkah?
You do the rain.
The commemoration, you can do it. We say, in the end of the day, it's a mitzvah. In the end of the day, every mitzvah we do is because it's a mitzvah. Even the logical mitzvahs, we do it because this is what Hashem wants, and that is the bottom line of all mitzvahs. And therefore, even if it's inconvenient or it doesn't make sense or whatever, we'll still do it. And we'll invite another Jew to do that mitzvah, even though they don't know what they're doing, but we bring them in and they do a mitzvah, because a mitzvah is a mitzvah. It's the Ratzon Hashem. This is what they couldn't stand, the Greeks couldn't stand. To do things that make sense, that have logic, that have meaning, that's fine, that's acceptable, because that's all within the human experience. But to do something that is superhuman, that is purely for Hashem, that's not transcendental, it transcending your logic, this is what the Greeks opposed, because that's Kedusha, that's what holiness is, the oil that floats above.
So that's what they try to convert people. After that, they understand that the Jewish people cannot going to be changed, and said, okay, you have to convert. And then they discover that people must have nefesh, not to convert.
Yeah.
There is people that be mityavnim, yes, there is, it was. Yeah. But like there is people that...
Now the Rebbe points out in the note at the bottom that things got worse. This is how things started. This was the Greek approach.
Yes.
Eventually, because of the rebellion, the resistance that there was amongst the Jewish people, so it became a decree against all mitzvahs, and even logical mitzvahs weren't allowed. And eventually, it was a physical war where they actually tried to kill us. But that was not the original intent. That was not their approach. You were going to ask something?
I was going to say, it sounds like the denial of the Ratzon, they're trying to disconnect us from that highest light that you're always telling us that's what we want to bring down. And that's the whole point of doing the Torah and Mitzvah, is to bring that, the Ratzon Hashem, it's above everything else.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they were happy for us to be like any other nation.
Yeah.
With our culture, every nation has their culture. Every nation has their philosophies. Every nation has their sacred works and their traditions. That's all fine, but the God element they want to take out of it, which means that if we approach mitzvahs this way, that's the Greek way of doing mitzvahs. That's the Hellenistic way. If we approach mitzvahs as being things that need to benefit my life, and if they don't, so then I'm not interested in it. What do I get out of this? What's the gain I get out of it? If it doesn't inspire me, if it doesn't make me feel good, and if it doesn't have a logic that fits my paradigms, so then I'm not interested in doing it. That's the Greek approach sneaking in, saying that it has to fit me. Whereas the Jewish approach is, this is the Ratzon Hashem, and we are connecting to Hashem through doing this. And you specifically connect, when you don't understand, it's even better in a way. Of course, he wants us to understand, so we use our brains. But that's not the reason, that's not the impetus for mitzvahs. The impetus is that this is Ratzon Hashem. And this is what bothered the Greeks so much, why they had to come in and not destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Have your temple, have nice architecture. But that this oil, which is just oil, but it's problematic because it's been moved by a Greek, there's no logic, there's no rationale there. That's ridiculous. And it's specifically the oil that floats above and stays separate, which is what the Ratzon Hashem is. This is what they try to contaminate. So the victory of finding that oil is finding there's some oil that cannot be touched, that can never be contaminated, and that was the victory. That's how we came back. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll continue next time.